Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. This year's campaign for the Cincinnati School Board has turned into one of the most intensely contested elections of the fall. 12 candidates have entered the race for 4 seats. Because current board member Dennis Sullivan has decided not to run for re-election, at least one newcomer will be elected, and more if one or more of the 9 newcomers upsets one or more of the incumbents. I am joined this morning by 3 non-incumbents running for the Cincinnati School Board. Sally Warner, the parent of 4 Cincinnati public school children, is a longtime school volunteer. Mrs. Warner has been endorsed by the Republicans, the Democrats, and the Charterites. Reverend Rousseau O'Neal is a parent of 3 children in the Cincinnati public schools. He is a minister and heads the education committee of the Baptist Ministers Association. Reverend O'Neal has been endorsed by the Democrats and the Coalition for an Accountable School Board, the slate organized by the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. Tim O'Connor is a parent of 2 children in the Cincinnati public schools. Mr. O'Connor, an adjunct instructor at Cincinnati State Technical College, is also endorsed by the Coalition for Accountable Schools. Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers.
Morning, Dan.
Sally, the thing that probably the average citizen out there, not just the voters, but the average citizen out there continues to see about the Cincinnati public schools is the inability to raise the level of academic achievement measured by standardized tests. What is it that as a school board member, a board member, not a teacher in a classroom, not a principal, what is it that a school board member could actually do to change any of that, to have any effect on that sort of result?
I think that board members can push to evaluate the effective programs that we do have. We do have high test scores in many of our schools. So what is it that's happening in those schools? And how can we recreate those in the schools who aren't performing so well currently? So I think it's to push for that. And I think this Students First, the Students Reform Plan that has been begun this year at 8 schools, did just that. So I think this board has pushed for, and finally we've gotten into place. So I think the job of the new school board would be to push forward that, to be evaluating that, to be making sure that those kinds of things that were put into place in the reform plan are working at those 8 schools and to continue them on in other schools.
So in other words, you're saying that you think the current school board has done evaluation of programs, has created this new program called Students First, started the implementation. So you feel like it's doing what you say a board can do.
Yes, I think it's begun. We finally have begun that. After watching all these years, the school boards that I've seen, finally this one has begun to say, you know, we have to be more accountable for the results that we're producing. So I think it's
So you
begun.
would say things have already changed?
I'd say they've begun to change, and we'll be hopeful for higher scores in the near future.
Rousseau, you have been very active, especially as a member of the Baptist Ministers Association with the Education Committee, and that group as a whole has been active trying to get the communities involved in schools. What can and we say that, parents, families, community have to be more involved with the students in the schools. What is it that, if you were elected as a school board member, you could make a difference to make sure that community involvement was more effective?
Well, as you touched on here lightly, we have been involved in so many organizations and so many committees, approximately 30 in the past year and a half. So we bring that community cooperative spirit immediately on arrival. We have represented so many various groups, anywhere from the Jewish Council to the Appalachian Community to the NAACP, in terms of negotiating certain items into the school system even as it exists today. So we've been able to do this from the outside looking in. Can you imagine what we can do from the inside looking out? There's so many groups who want to do so much, but they feel as if they have been handcuffed to a certain degree. And we all realize that parents, ministers, social groups, government officials all play a part in the education of our children.
Have they been handcuffed by the school board and its policies? Is that perception legitimate? And what would you do to change that, to take the handcuffs off?
Well, the perception definitely is there, whether it's real in actuality or not. If you believe a certain thing, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We would definitely have the boards open We would definitely move our board meetings to certain schools throughout the city. We will definitely have an open forum. If you, as a former member of this Council of City Forest Park, one of the elder statesmen said to me at that time, if you have 7 people agreeing on every issue, every time, then 6 of you are unnecessary. So we cannot have an adversarial type relationship with any of the community, but we should have an open door policy that they challenge us to do a better job.
Okay. Tim, you come from a educational background.
Yes.
Have taught in university
Yep.
environments, been an administrator in university environments. I think very honestly, sometimes the average person out there gets tired of a lot of the educational jargon that gets spewed out by the schools and by theories about how we're going to change it and make it better in the future. What is it that you would bring to the school board coming out of that educational background that would be different than what's already there?
I'm one of those people that gets tired of the educational jargon spewed out as well. Couldn't agree with you more, Dan, and thanks. One of the points would be that as a parent with 2 children in Cincinnati Public Schools, the time has come for the voice of the parents to be heard on the Board of Education, at the Board of Education. The 3 of us here this morning are 3 parents running for the Board of Ed with our children actively attending Cincinnati schools. And that jargon has sit there and said that Cincinnati schools lament, as we've seen and learned in this campaign this fall, what's happening? Why are parents and families moving out of the district? Why are children not going there? I hear the clear message, Tim, change the report cards. Report cards have things like rubric product scores as a part of their formula. Now, the current board brags on that and says we have our public relations instrument, and these are neat things, and they'll show good student assessment and performance. And yet, like your first question said, what about the performance scores? What about the proficiency test scores? So that the time has come to sit there and send a clear message that things as fundamental as the Cincinnati Public School report card need to be made simplified and accountable to the teachers, to the parents, to the students. And those instruments, with clear messages about good success or be concerned are the times for things to change.
How did we get there? Who does that message need to be sent to? Who is the problem? Is it the board? You said board brags on the current report card method, but is it the board that drives something like that, or is it that the board has to tell the administration to change the way things
It's
operate?
certainly the board's implied acceptance of the administration believing they've done a good thing.
Okay,
It's the board's implied acceptance when they sit there and say, well, let's do a good thing and let's implement something called students first. And what was the board's major thing to do with that? Well, we're going to disrupt performing schools. Roll Hill and Cheviot were schools that were reorganized and restructured, coming right out of the Students First Strategic Master Plan. Those were part of this performing schools, the successful schools. Parents were excluded from the Board of Ed chambers the night the board passed the master plan last December.
Sally, you said, and you mentioned Students First as the beginning of a reform. Tim has just said this was a mistake and it was done behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
No, I attended, there were several public hearings, and I attended those, and every person that attended those public hearings was heard. And then the night that they were to vote, there were people who were not permitted in. There just wasn't enough room, but there had been public hearings. And
were there people in the room besides the board members themselves when they did vote?
Yes, there was lots.
Just there were more who couldn't get in.
Well, at the hearings, everyone who wanted to come was in. The hearings were announced and people came, but later, the night they were to decide, there were people who weren't let in.
Okay, that's a process question, but Tim has raised also another question, and that is closing successful schools. Do you agree with him that Students First closed successful schools, and the 2 that you were citing was Cheviot and Roll Hill?
I don't believe that was part of Students First. When we went to the Quadrant several years ago, what we ended up doing was starting too many foreign language schools, and the students that were in the foreign language schools that were moved didn't follow those programs. For example, Carthage was a bilingual school, and it shut down and opened as a Paideia school, and everybody stayed. They didn't go and follow where the bilingual programs were. So unfortunately, it wasn't enough to make people move to other schools, so we had to make an adjustment. We had many, many open seats in many of the bilingual classrooms, so we had to consolidate. And that's unfortunate because Roll Hill was a successful school, but there weren't enough children at the school to keep the building open. And you know, they had 5 kids in a 4th grade class and 6 kids in a 7th grade class, and a mile away there was another bilingual program that it was merged with. So that's unfortunate because it was a successful school and it was shut down, but you know, the dollars weren't there to keep those 2 programs open.
And just to move this along, Tim, my understanding of Cheviot was there was a lot of neighborhood support for returning that to they didn't close Cheviot School.
Per se, no.
No, they didn't. And they returned it to being a neighborhood school. Mm-hmm. Do you disagree with what Sally just said, that Roll Hill, in fact, there was a rationale for changing the setup at Roll Hill as opposed to closing a successful school?
I would, clearly say if the plan to implement Students First was heard and listened to through the hearings, where the parents were saying, listen to us, wait a minute. The parents wouldn't have been still having to try to have their voice heard at a Board of Education meeting when the plan's approved. And that also said that the dynamics of closing Roll Hill, of impacting Cheviot, of restructuring Gamble, and all those numbers, and thinking, well, they'll all work, this will all work out, are some of the things that's in there. Say, well, now why do families quit Cincinnati Public Schools? That's I think a clear, easy thing along.
Let
with
me
the
move
report
on.
cards.
A lot of attention, Rousseau, this fall has been paid to the situation at Woodward, and Woodward sort of is a symbol of what's going on in a lot of schools in terms of the situation inside the building and physically, the deterioration of the building, the bad attitude, the depressed attitude among faculty and students leaving and not being able to field a football team, and all those things. I noticed that you are a graduate of Woodward High School. I noticed that on your resume. What is it that went wrong with Woodward? And again, since you're running for school board, what could the board have done differently to change that situation, that outcome?
Well, I am a product of the total Cincinnati Public School package. I went to Evanston Elementary School, graduated from there, then went to Walnut Hills. But then 71 disrupted our neighborhood, took my home, and right now you go through my backyard when you go down 71. Therefore, we moved to Bond Hill. Well, I was able to go right to Woodward because they had a college prep academic program where I was able to continue. As a matter of fact, in 1972, the valedictorian, which I was not, of Woodward High School, beat the valedictorian of Walnut Hills in national testing. But I was Citizen of the Year.
Okay, so Woodward was a good school then. But what's happened
school.
today? What's happened today?
Whatever occurred between 1972 and 1997, I cannot tell you the exact detail which brought it to the demise of the state that it's currently in. I think people like myself, who's an alumni of that school, who did not get involved, I think we pay part of the blame. I think a lot of the community effort and parents who did not get involved, we share a lot of the blame. But you asked a question about board and what are we supposed to do? Well, board is to enact policy to ensure that every school is a quality school. Mm-hmm. And for the allowance of Woodward, we gathered there several weeks ago people from all over the community.
We're going to run out of time.
School. Okay.
Is the board at fault for what happened there? And could you make a difference if you were a board member?
Yes,
That's the question.
Definitely. You lead back to what can I do as far as community? We brought so many different community organizations there and landscapers, and we began to start building, rebuilding. We're walking the halls at Woodward High School. We're getting totally involved in inciting inspiration to these youth. Woodward is the only school with no real program. They brag about programs that once was there. There's none there. And then why do we have such a tier system? Why do we have like Walnut with its situations? Why do we have a School of Performing Arts, but we don't have Woodward with anything that excites the children to go forth? Yes, there is some policy that has been enacted, that has led to the demise of
Okay.
Woodward, and we would definitely change that.
We've only got about 2 minutes left, so I want to make sure everybody gets a chance on this one. One of the charges is about Woodward and a number of other places that Michael Brandt, the superintendent, failed to make some decisions over the past 5 years that would have changed things at Woodward. Michael Brandt may be about to leave as superintendent. If you're elected to the school board, you may have a choice of a new superintendent. What are you going to be looking for in a new superintendent?
I'm going to be looking for somebody who can lead us through this reform period. You know, we have this plan. How can we take this and make sure that all schools become successful? So I'm going to be looking for someone with the leadership who can carry out the reform.
Do you presume that's from inside the system or outside the system?
I can't say that I think it's inside or outside. I'm not familiar enough with all of the people in there, but I think I need to look at what our options are.
Rousseau, what about a new superintendent?
I think Michael Brandt, though, has spent too much time politicking. In terms of these levies, he's got involved in every group and done things that the current board should have been doing. I don't think he's had the opportunity to be a pure administrator. If he so deems to retire, we would definitely be looking for a person to administer programming, to get involved in vocational training, to get college intensified in all of these schools, to restore extracurricular activities at the middle school as well as the high school level. That's the type of action I expect to see.
Okay, so you're talking about a person, but also a change in the definition of what the board does to allow that person to be an administrator.
Exactly.
Tim, about 30 seconds.
Cincinnati Public Schools can attract a quality superintendent, and Cincinnati Public Schools needs a Board of Education with accountable leadership to make sure that that superintendent is accountable both to his administration or her administration and to the board and to the public, to the parents, to the voters, to the taxpayers. We'll need accountable board leadership that's connected to the community and involved with everyone to make sure we're successful.
Well, thank you for being with us, and we will catch up with you on election night, November 4th.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Butler County's population is booming, not only in new subdivisions, but also in the county jail. The proposed solution? A new $35 million jail to be funded by an additional half-cent sales tax. Stay tuned for discussion of this proposal. We're out. On Thursday last week, Butler County officials unveiled plans for a new $35 million jail. To fund the construction and operation of that jail, the commissioners are asking voters to support Issue 3, a half-cent sales tax that will raise between $10 and $12 million a year. To discuss this proposal, I am joined this morning by two Butler County officials. Derek Conklin is the Butler County Administrator. Captain Rick Jones is a member of the Butler County Sheriff's Office and is Deputy Chief, as I understand it. Deputy Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Not the top person, though.
No, not that.
Rick, would you give us a little sort of a sense of what the current jail conditions are if people walked in there right now?
Sure. The first time I walked in, I was appalled at the conditions. I've worked in the penitentiary system about 17 years at Lebanon Correctional Institution. The first time I seen the conditions, I was appalled. Appalled by the safety, the overcrowding. We've got 14,000 warrants we can't serve in the county. We had a broom closet one day, and then one day it's a triple bunk cell with 36 bunks. And we've got inmates laying on the mattresses on the floor.
I got to ask you, is that even legal according to contemporary standards?
Well, the part of being legal and not being in compliance is two different things.
Okay.
We're not in compliance with state standards. No, we're not. Our alternative is that we turn these people loose. What we do now is one comes in, one has to go out. The county the jail was built to house 80 inmates, and at times we have 200, and even at times we have to put them in the garage on cots.
Huh.
It's really tough.
And also, and people are seeing some video right now of conditions inside the jail.
Sure.
It's not really all that safe for your deputies.
For the employees that work in the facility, any employee that walks past the bars, you can almost reach out and touch them. They can throw urine in their face. They can reach out and grab them. They can jab them with things. The safety for the employees is atrocious just by the way it was built. And it's not that great for when you have overcrowding with your inmate population either.
Okay. Now, That's the conditions. Derek, what would the new jail be? How would it change that situation?
Well, the general construction is different today. The current jail is built on a linear sight system where it's a direct line of sight between the officers and inmates. The new system and the new jail would be built on a modular pod system where one deputy is in a control room with all the technology in front of him and him or her can see many inmates at the same time. There's distance between them. It'll be more state-of-the-art.
And therefore more efficient to run?
Yes, yes. Right now we have to have two inmates on each floor, on each half, and the ratio will be cut way down.
2 deputies on
Yes.
each half.
Mhm.
Okay. One of the questions I think people might ask is, okay, you got an overcrowding problem. Why not just add on to the current jail? Wouldn't that be less costly?
The current jail, some forethought was put into the current jail. And back in the 70s, they built it so that you could add 2 more floors.
Okay.
Law changed that if we built 2 more floors, we would really not have a net increase in jail space because you'd have to bring the current jail then up to state standards, which would be more expensive to do.
So in the end, you end up with
no gain.
So is it more cost effective to build new?
Yes, it really is, because there's no ventilation system in this jail. The plumbing's in the cement. It's just a nightmare for maintenance and repair. You could not put enough money into that jail to make it meet standards.
This new jail, we just saw some pictures of
Yes,
it.
sir.
Gee, is this going to be the new Butler County Country Club?
I'm glad you brought that up. You come to Butler County, you come to a tough jail. Our inmates work. They go out. We raise over 2 tons of vegetables a year. Inmates work in the jail. They don't have cable TV. There won't be golf courses in this jail. You come to the Butler County Jail, you know you've been to jail. And it's a tough facility. And we want them to, it's not a boys' camp. And we want them to leave with that impression. We don't want them to get a warm, fuzzy feeling when they leave. We want them to get a very disgusted feeling when they leave. The new facility will be built to look nice from the outside with the city, but when you go inside, it's going to be a tough facility.
Okay. Derek, we've got to come to the tough tax and political questions.
Yes.
Why a sales tax as opposed to property tax levy or something like that?
The biggest issue why the sales tax over the property tax is a property tax could not be permanent and ongoing. This is a crucial, expensive, long-term funding issue for the county. We can't go to the state. The state has some grants monies that we can try to get. And they said, you have to come to us with a proposal that has guaranteed funding. A sales tax will do that if it's passed on a permanent level. The state has given some counties across the state grant dollars to build the jail, and then these communities did not have the money to operate the jails. So the state says, we're not doing that anymore. You have to guarantee us a source of operating money. And that's the hidden cost of this whole program.
Okay, so now let's be clear here. The sales tax, if it's enacted, it's a .5 on top of the 5.5 cents. This is in perpetuity.
Yes.
This isn't a 5-year or a 10-year.
It will be permanent.
It will be permanent.
Yes, sir.
How does that compare, if it was passed, how will Butler County then compare with the counties around it?
The other counties around us already have 6%. Hamilton County, Warren County, I believe, and Preble
County, yes.
And so we'll finally be at their level. We are only one of 3 counties that have a 0.5% sales tax. The majority of all the counties in the state of the 88 have 1%, 3/4 or more.
Okay. So it sort of brings you into line
Yes.
with
Yes.
Everybody else.
Yes, sir.
Rick, I got to feel that you don't spend all your time in jail. You probably know a lot of people in the community.
Sure.
I have to be honest with you. I haven't heard, as I've talked to people in the community, any significant opposition to this. Nobody likes taxes. But when you are out there and you're talking to people at the corner donut shop, how do you answer the question of do you really need this? And by the way, we only got about 30 seconds here.
Okay, that'll be tough for me. I tell them this. You basically, as a citizen and a taxpayer of Butler County, You know, you have to have safety. You have to be able to lay down and sleep at night, close both eyes, not one. You know, you have a choice. Either they're in jail or they're on the street in Kroger's and in the mall, same place I go. And when I put it to the people that way and I get a chance to talk to them, they support the issue.
Well, thank you for being with
Yes.
us, and we'll be watching this
Thanks,
on
Dan.
election
Appreciate
night
it.
on November 4th.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for being with us. Next Sunday, we will continue our countdown to Election Day. I will be joined by more candidates and tackle the proposal to modify the civil service system in Cincinnati. Morning. Thank you.